Welcome back to the Sure Sales Group Show, episode 45. Here again with Todd Mummert for the Frequently Asked Questions Show. Today we're talking about interest rates. Here on the show we talk about real estate, sales, negotiation, marketing, entrepreneurship, buying, selling, renting, investing, and what it's taken us to grow from 2 employees to 20, from 30 million in sales to 130 million in sales in the last few years. Thanks for watching. Todd, thanks so much for coming back. Appreciate it. A question I got a bunch in the last couple weeks since did the last show was around interest rates. Everyone knows they're going up. So thanks for coming on and dropping some knowledge on interest rates for our audience today. So the first question I want to pose, and I answer it differently every time, but is like, what are interest rates and kind of how does this whole system work? Where do these numbers come from?
It's a great question and probably one of the most popular ones that we get. So interest rates, the money that you borrow, obviously, what determines that, it's a host of a ton of economical factors, but one of the main ones is where the 10-year bond is. Over the last 6 or 7 years, essentially since the bust has happened, the Fed Reserve has actually stepped in and they're buying up, they're the #1 purchaser of mortgage-backed securities, which essentially has helped to artificially keep rates down. So in October 2017, they decided, well, we're going to go ahead and stop buying as much as we have been, and every quarter, they're actually going to reduce the amount they buy by $4 billion. So that was October. Here we are, it's March 2018. We've already seen an increase in rates of about 0.5% due to this change.
So 0.5%, meaning they were hovering around what, 3 and 3.75, now they're 4.25, is that?
Yeah, like high threes. It depends on what loan program, et cetera. But yeah, about there, and now they're pretty much in the 4s. We may not see 3s again for quite some time based on what all the experts are telling us.
I heard, is this true that rates hit a 4-year high like a couple weeks ago? I saw that as a headline.
Yeah, they actually did, and it looks like, based on what the National Association of Realtors, Mortgage Bankers Association, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are predicting that we're probably going to see rates somewhere in the high 4s, mid to high 4s by the end of this year. So we might look at another increase of 1/4 to 0.5% is what the experts are saying.
Todd, I'm not going to lie, that scares me a little bit because when people are going to buy houses, the interest rate directly and just fundamentally impacts exactly what their monthly payment's going to be. Well, not exactly, but that's a major factor, right? The higher the interest rate, the higher your monthly payment's going to be. So hopefully it doesn't go too high, but what that means to me is if you're thinking about buying, now this interest rate conversation that people have been talking about for years just got a lot more real because it is climbing.
Yeah, it did. It did get more real, but I mean, if we look at rates historically, even as close as 2007, rates were 6.5%, almost 7%. So we're not getting in a range that's just ridiculous or ludicrous. And to kind of give you an example of that, if you bought a house for $300,000, let's say your loan amount's $300,000, a 0.5% increase in your rate is about $90 a month. So we're talking, the cost of 1 latte per day is the difference in what your payment is. So
say that again. $300,000 loan amount, 0.5% is how much a month?
About $90.
All right.
On your payment.
So to be conservative, every 0.5 point is about $100 a month. And it's all based on the loan amount for $300K. But a lot of our buyers here in Baltimore, Greater Maryland, that's about right. If you're buying a house between $250 and $400, which most people seem to be able to afford, that's a good barometer. So that's a good tip. I'll use that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not as scary as it seems. So one thing that we wanted to talk about today, we were talking before the show, is obviously where the rates are trending, which we just discussed, and affordability. But this touches on the last show, is what actually affects my interest rate. And there's a couple different factors. Probably the most important is your credit score. Depending on what loan you pick, every 20 points higher or lower, it's kind of a bracket that's going to affect what your rate is and also what program you pick.
What's the highest credit? What is the brackets roughly, just so people know?
So excellent credit is essentially 740 and above, and then it goes down from there in 20 point increments in a sense. So that not only affects what rate you get, but if you chose a program where, say, you had mortgage insurance, the mortgage insurance is higher because you're a higher risk if you have lower credit scores. So it's hugely important.
One quick thing before you go. This is the question everyone wants. Hey, what's my interest rate? So that's what you're getting into, the credit score.
Sure.
One thing Coastal Lending does, and Todd Mummert will do personally, because you've done it for multiple clients of mine, is people have no idea what their credit score is sometimes. If you give them a call, go to their website, they can pull your credit and show you exactly what your credit score is and exactly what things you can do to get to that 740 level or get to that next tier that's going to make your mortgage options much better. So that's important. I just want people to know that. Your credit score is not fixed. It changes, and these guys know how to get it up by maybe paying this off or opening up a new credit card. There's like an algorithm to it.
Yeah, there is. And to touch on your point, we actually have a simulator that we can kind of go through and make changes. We can pay credit cards down, we can pay things off, we can get rid of collections, and that'll tell us roughly what your simulated score would be. So it doesn't cost you anything as a consumer. It's something we do on your behalf when you're getting ready to buy. The other thing too that I wanted to kind of touch on is down payment. The more you put down, sometimes that can have an effect on the rate too. The lower down payment programs are great, the 1% down, the 3% down, but the rates tend to be a little bit higher because it's a higher risk for the investor. And then the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on with interest rates is, if you can't always contact a mortgage professional like myself, where can I find this information, right, Andrew? I mean, people always want to know. I found something that's free that's really useful, especially if you're in the process or you're out looking. If you Google Daily Rate Lock Advisory, it's a great resource because it talks about every single sector that's going to have an impact on what interest rates are going to do. And it actually advises you, depending on when you're closing, whether or not you should float your rate or lock your rate. It's been pretty impactful for my clients over the years, and it's been pretty accurate as well.
You helped me with that. You've been using this for a while.
I have, yeah.
Well, time out. Just to break it down, what's float your rate versus lock your rate? Explain that to people who don't know what that means.
Sure. So once you lock your rate in, you're under contract, that's your rate. That's what you're going to close at. It's not going to change. Floating means you haven't locked it in yet, and you're subject to daily changes. Rates can sometimes change multiple times per day depending on what's going on in the market. So the float is kind of a gamble versus the lock is a guarantee.
Almost everyone locks. In my experience, they go, I just want to lock my rate in. People don't like the risk. What's nice, the one thing that you guys offer is that float down.
We do.
That's subject to whatever program it is, but imagine this. You lock your rate, you feel good about it, but one thing that Coastal Lending can do for you and why we love working with them is they'll say, look, we'll lock your rate, you can sleep at night, everyone's good, but if the rates get lower, we'll float you down. That's a really cool program. And one other thing I heard, because there's still this misnomer that you have to put 20% down. There's amazing programs. Coastal Lending and Todd Mummert can do 1% down conventional loan. That means not FHA, not crazy mortgage insurance, 1% down, or 3% down, or 5% down, or 10, etc. So it's just good to start with someone who has these resources, and that's why we're doing these videos. So hopefully you can preempt a lot of these questions and uneasiness around interest rates, monthly payments, mortgage stuff, credit score. Just go to the professional. They'll work for you for free. It's not like he's charging you anything. And then, of course, they make money when they go ahead and do mortgage deals, just like a realtor makes money when we do a home sale. So, Todd, I think you really nailed it. You talked about what interest rates are. That's the rate you're borrowing the money. I think people get that, why they change and what impacts the rate. Any final thoughts on, you hit them with the daily rate lock. I saw you had a couple other things here that they can look at.
Sure. I mean, one thing that I actually just thought about since you were talking was, we're seeing rates go up, and some people are looking at it as a negative thing. This is a positive thing right now. We're seeing a normalization in the market. The other thing that does is it actually opens up more programs. So more people can get qualified. Your debt versus your income, they're starting to kind of creep those up higher, which means more people can get loans based on their income levels and their debt levels. So it's kind of an inverse relationship there. So rates are going up, but programs and guidelines aren't tightening, they're expanding. So I think that combination goes really well for kind of the future of this year and maybe the next few years as far as where things are trending. So I don't think you can necessarily look at all the negatives. There's a lot of positives that go along with the rate trend.
That's a really good point. And if you don't get it already, one thing you need to realize is I talk a lot about how to get a good deal and how to structure offers and what a good agent does. But as much research that goes into making sure you get a good deal, there's a whole nother kind of vertical on how to get a good mortgage, and it starts with having a really good professional guide you through the ever-changing kind of system that we use. Yeah. So I appreciate you being that guy for so many of our clients. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
We'll do it again soon. All right, Todd, you know the drill. You can't leave here until you give them the oh, by the way, so take it away.
Oh, by the way, coming soon, Coastal Lending Group, who is a direct lender as well as a broker, which means we have multiple investors that we can kind of lend with and get different programs. One of our investors is coming out with a program soon. It's called a to be determined lock. What does that mean for you guys? Essentially, you can lock a rate without even being under contract. So with all the talk we had about interest rates going up, this is kind of a hedge, against, future increases in interest rates, and you can lock in with where rates are now. Then if you qualify for our float down program, we can always lower the rates if they in fact go down from the time you go under contract. So phenomenal program coming to you guys soon from Coastal Lending Group.
Time out, Todd, time out. You're telling me you can lock the rate before they buy the house?
Pretty soon we're going to be able to do that, yeah.
That's unbelievable.